Today is going to be another author interview moment. Yay! I haven't had one for a while. Today it is going to be about J.M. Frey.
Hi, I'm J.M. Frey.
J.M. is an author, screenwriter. She has written many novels. I'm going to link down below to her website so you guys can make sure you can go there, check out all the books she's written. She does a lot of amazing things, so she's definitely somebody worth checking out. So, J.M., thank you so much for joining us. Your debut novel has such a unique storyline. Where did the idea come from?
The idea for Triptych came on my mother's birthday. I was sitting in an onsen in Fukuoka-ken, Japan, on the top of a little mountain, and I was thinking that it was my mother's birthday, and I was on the other side of the planet, and my life at my age was so different from my mother's life at that same age. My mother had traveled. She was an au pair in Switzerland, but by the time she was my age, she was married with me, and I had just been born. So I'm kind of almost exactly half my mother's age. So thinking about that and sitting in this onsen and being in a completely different cultural context, I kind of wondered if, 25-year-old mother would like 25-year-old me. Would we have gotten along? And the answer to that one is, I think, yes, but of course no good story or conflict came from an easy yes, so I started wondering what would happen if we didn't get along? What would happen if we met each other and we didn't like each other? And that's where this idea of Gwen going back into the past and meeting her mother, Ev, basically at the same age, came from. And the conflict of this is my baby, this is my child, but I don't like the adult that she's become. So from there, the idea was, well, if you're going to have time travel, then how does it exist and when was it invented? And the easiest concept was, the aliens brought it. So the aliens came to Earth and they accidentally brought time travel technology with them. So I finished writing that short story. It's called Back, and I actually sold it, but a writing friend of mine said, where's the rest of the story? There's more to what's going on here. You could make this a novel-length story. And as I was talking to her, her name was Liz, Liz said, also, I have a question. Gwen and Basil and the alien that they got this time travel device from, were they like together, the three of them? And I was like, no, they weren't. Oh my God, they were. What if they were? So thank you, Liz, for turning it into a throuple. And that's where the concept of the aliens coming to Earth with a different kind of love than we have came from. And then, of course, again, because novels in conflict, I thought, okay, so that's a really interesting storyline. What if that was a major conflict as well? That not that the aliens came to Earth, but that the aliens came to Earth with the wrong kind of love.
When did you know you wanted to be an author?
I can't say that I ever really had a moment where I thought, I want to be an author. But the first time I met an author was in grade 3. And Mrs. Graham, my grade 3 teacher, brought in a local illustrator writer named Werner Zimmerman. And he's a very, very entertaining speaker. He made us all do finger warm-ups before we could even ask questions. And I still remember the finger warm-ups. And he always signs with a zoomy Z, which I think is wonderful because his last name is with a Z, and he goes all the way down the page. And he was just a really entertaining, effusive guy. But it was the first time in my life that I understood that writing was a job and illustrating was a job. And not only was it a job, it wasn't a job that happened over there. It was some guy who lives one town over and does it from his artist workshop in his house near my hometown. And that was the first time I really realized that a writer was a person. When I wanted to be a writer, well, I started writing fan fiction in 1991 when I was years old. And I really enjoyed it, but for me that was just a hobby. The same way that other people doodle in sketchbooks or on the side of their notes to keep their brain engaged during a lesson, I wrote little stories. I don't think I ever thought about putting them out there in any way except on the internet, in the Yahoo groups and the Brave Knit groups, and then later LiveJournal and Schneagle and Diagon Alley and fanfiction.net, and then much later Archive of Our Own. But I really I didn't see the need to share these stories outside of that sphere. But I had a teacher who put me forward for the Author Conference, which here is a conference for young school children. I think it was grade 6 for me, grade 5 or 6. And my teacher put me forward for it, and I wrote an illustrated short story and took it to this event and was paired up with an author named, her name is right here, with Dorothy Joan Harris to spend a day learning basically how to be an author. And of course, this is the story that I did by Jessica Frey. And that even didn't really do it for me. Like, it was an interesting day, but it wasn't like, oh, now I have to be a writer. It wasn't really until my TA in first year university was reading some of my fan fiction, because we found out that we were fans of some of the same fandoms, so we were swapping fan fiction back and forth around, of course, all of my class lessons and essays and everything you have to do in first year university. And she said, this is really good. You could take all of the elements of Dragon Ball out of this and just make it a novel. And I thought, okay, I'll try it. So then the next year I signed up for NaNoWriMo for the first time. And I think it was the second or third year that it was going. This year's going to be my 17th year doing it. And I spent basically 3 years writing this massive, epic, 300-page monstrosity. And then buried it. It wasn't really, it was okay, and I don't mind sharing it with the public, but it wasn't anything that was really professionally publishable. I wrote another Nano book, which no one will ever see. I've buried it under a tree. It was terrible. And then I moved to Japan. So at this point now I'm fourth year university. I've graduated. I moved to Japan, and there was a writers club, and I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll try again. I'll join this English language writers club in Japan, and I'll try again, and I'll do Nano again. And that's when I came up with the idea for Triptych. And then, fortunately, unfortunately, I got hit by a car while I was there, and I was laid up for 6 weeks. And I had kind of nothing better to do, so I was like, I guess I'll start that novel now, and that novel was Triptych. And it wasn't until basically Liz said, this is pretty good, where's the rest of it? I think you could make money on this, that I went, oh, I suppose I could be an author, I could be a writer, because my big plan was to be an actor, and then I got hit by a car and I'll never dance again. So it was like, okay, this is the first time I've had to think about what else I'm going to do. If I can't be an actor, if I can't move anymore, how else can I fulfill this storytelling urge? And it was then that I was like, well, maybe I'll try to be a writer. And then I sold Triptych. So then I was a writer. Then I was an author.
You have so many talents outside of writing. One of them is cosplaying. Could you tell us a little bit about how you got started in that?
I got into cosplaying almost exactly immediately after my very first convention. So I was a baby geek. Nobody else in my family would really classify themselves as science fiction and fantasy nerds. My younger brother loves video games, but it's not really the same thing. But we used to watch Star Trek: The Next Generation on Friday nights. We would order pizza, we would watch an episode, then we would watch a movie or something. It was really important bonding family time. And for me, I had a huge crush on Will Wheaton. Not Wesley Crusher, Will Wheaton. And I just loved watching him. And I still love watching him. And I still have a massive crush on Will Wheaton. But for me, that was sort of the gateway, the entryway into the nerd scene. And for Christmas one year, I think it was, my mother took me to a tiny little Star Trek convention in Drayton, Ontario, and I saw people dressed up like Starfleet officers, and it was so cool, and I wanted to buy one of the outfits, and then I don't recall if there was a fight over it, but I can imagine my mother saying, no, of course not, you're going to grow out of it, and where would you wear it anyway? But from that point on, it was really stuck in my head that you should dress up for conventions. Fast forward to university, and it's the summer between first and second year university, and my high school friends and I had planned on going to this big convention that had just kind of started in Toronto called CN Anime. For those of you who know, CN Anime is now Fan Expo, and Fan Expo is now the largest convention in Canada, I believe. And we had all these plans to go as characters from Cardcaptor Sakura, and I'd bought some of the fabric already, and then my friends and I had a fight, as you do when you are dramatic young ladies. And my new university friends were like, well, if you've bought the ticket to this event already, we'll buy tickets and we'll go with you. And that was like the weekend that sort of solidified my friendship with my current university-age friends. And one of them had experience as a seamstress. Now, we were all in school for theater, so I have to preface this with we all had basic sewing skills, because in first year university, at our program, you had to take wardrobe classes. You had to learn how to read a pattern. You had to learn how to fix a zipper and put a button back on, because this theater program said, we're not going to turn out actors who are absolutely useless at repairing their own costumes in the middle of a show. And a couple of my friends had gone further with it. They'd taken a couple of extra years, or they had parents who liked to sew. And so we whipped together this costume. My very first cosplay was Marimea Kushranada from Gundam Wing Endless Waltz. I dyed with the front of my hair that mandarin orange to match the character, and went to the convention and was hooked. I loved the attention, because theater kid. I loved dressing up. I loved the guerrilla theater, where you could sort of put on the character a little bit, but you didn't have to. You could choose to engage with people as the character. You could choose to engage with people as yourself. And my friends, theater people as well, were watching me going, that looks like a lot of fun. So for the next basically 12 years, we dressed up for every single convention, and it got to the point where we were doing one convention a month and 1 or 2 costumes per convention, and sometimes we would recycle them and sometimes we weren't. And then coming up to 2009, so I signed Triptych in 2008. 2009 it was announced, other way around. I signed Triptych in 2009. It was announced in 2010. It came out in 2011. So in 2009, we cosplayed as the steampunk X-Men. And we had a really great group together, people who are now professionally working in the film industry as costume makers on things like Star Trek Discovery and leather workers. And we won Best in Show. At the master level. Well, we won Best in Show overall. And we kind of got to the end of that and sort of looked at each other and said, there's nowhere else to go. We've won every single award that exists. What do we do now? And a couple of my friends moved into costuming professionally. A couple of friends were like, well, I'm satisfied. I'm just going to start re-wearing the hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of costumes that I've had before. And at that point, I met an editor and decided and signed Triptych with her. So from kind of that point on, I was barred from wearing a costume at conventions because of my new profession. And it was sort of like, well, I can show up at these events as a guest dressed in my street clothes, or I can show up at these events as a cosplayer. And obviously I chose to be the guest because I wanted to be professional. I wanted my career to take off. So I mean, I love cosplay. I still love cosplay. And in the intervening years, I have made about 3 more costumes with the help of my professional costume maker friends to do photo shoots for a calendar, to wear for Halloween. But I'm not going to lie, I go to a convention as like a guest of honor, and I'm sitting there behind my table signing autographs, and I look at like a beautiful cosplay go by, or I see somebody stop and get a whole bunch of camera tribbles come around her and like take photos and just appreciate the art and the hard work that goes into what these cosplayers do. And I'll admit, I get a little bit nostalgic for what that was, because for me, sitting in a convention room hallway on the terrible, mind-altering carpet, eating chips and drinking Iron Brew and horrible sodas and eating Pocky by the fistful and laughing and dressing up and fixing each other's makeup, to me, that's my childhood. That's the summer of my childhood. Other people remember going on their dirt bikes out to this treehouse in the forest and playing pirates. For me, it was my friends sitting in their mother's basement, sewing, pricking ourselves, bleeding all over the costumes. We have a saying, it's not a real cosplay until you've bled into it. For me, that is my quintessential childhood memory. And I think cosplaying helps the other storytelling part of my brain to have something to do while my writing brain is working, chugging so furiously away at a story. It's a different skill set. And cosplaying teaches you so much. To be a cosplayer, like if you look at the end credits of a film, there's somebody who made the shoes, there's somebody who made the armor, there's somebody who did the makeup, there's somebody who did the wigs, there's somebody who distressed the fabric, there's somebody who sewed the fabric, there's somebody who washed the fabric and cut the fabric, and there's all these different roles. When you do cosplay, you make your own shoes, you do your own makeup, you put in your own contacts, you make your own fake teeth, you style your own wig, you wash and cut and sew and distress your own costume. You are a one-person wardrobe department and hair and makeup department, and the skills that you have to be a cosplayer are astounding. I barely even know what Warbler is, but I see the Warbler armor that people do, and I am amazed by their skill sets. And on top of doing that Warbler armor, they also sewed that 4-way stretch fabric and did their own makeup and styled their own wig. Like, cosplayers are so creative and they learn so many skills. And for me, one of the other reasons I think I still cosplay is because I like the fiddly work. So when my brain is working through a plot point in a book that I'm struggling with, I can walk away from my computer, go sit down at the sewing table and like hand stitch a row of Regency era embroidery on the hem of a gothic romantic nightgown that I'm making. Yes, I'm actually making that. Yes, I'm cosplaying again for Halloween this year. And while my hands are doing something minute and repetitive, my brain can go for a wander. So I think cosplaying is wonderful, and anybody who derides it doesn't understand how much work goes into it. And B, so much fun. And C, I think cosplaying has made me a better writer because it's taught me how to logic puzzle around things, how to look at an outfit that's been illustrated and can't possibly exist like that in the real world because physics says no, and make it happen anyway. Cosplay has really taught me to be extremely creative.
You also have your feet in movies and television. Could you share a little bit about what you do there and how you got started down this path?
I wouldn't say that I have my whole foot in movies and television. I would say I have like a toe in movies and television. So as I said, I attended theater school for my undergrad, and we did a little bit of film work with that. And coming out of my theater degree, I moved immediately to Japan, and I started training with a Seiyu sensei and a Nihonbuyo sensei. So Seiyu is the Japanese art of voice acting. Nihonbuyo is women's dance, the kind that the geisha do. And as I've already mentioned, I got hit by the car, which kind of ended the dance career. So when I moved back to Canada, I really worked on the voice acting career. Now, I had done some voice acting work while I was still in university. I had secured somebody who needed a female voice to do in-store commercials, so I did a lot of jingles. I did a lot of, this week, gingham fabric is 50% off. Don't forget to talk to the teller. That kind of stuff. A lot of really commercial stuff. And I had done a bunch of voicemail tree stuff. So like when you call a company and it's the automatic answering machine. Hi, and welcome to JM Frey's website. To get to marketing, press 1. Which paid and were nice, but what I really wanted to do was character work. So when I moved back to Canada, I actually got an agent and started auditioning for character work. Nearly got some really, really nice roles, but it never actually landed. And while I was doing the hustle for the voice acting, because obviously you don't get paid until you work, I started working as a background extra for film and television here in Toronto because I needed money. And while I was doing the background extra stuff, you meet other background extras, you meet some of the crew. I started talking to some of the PAs, and they were saying, well, this next show that we're doing, we need an office PA. Can you be basically a secretary? And I was like, I can totally be a secretary. I've absolutely been a secretary before. And then I started moving into PA work like that. From there, my agency closed, so I lost my agent and I couldn't really secure another one. And the background stuff wasn't paying enough, so I moved into a corporate position. But I keep ping-ponging back because my heart is in film and television. I would really love to be working there, but right now I just need to find another voice acting agent and start the hustle all over again. And it is a hustle. Like, becoming a voice actor is a lot of hard work. And one of the things about being a voice actor is that because you're an actor, you are a vocal chameleon. So one actor can play 20 different roles and they have 30 different voices. So companies tend to hire the same group of people over and over again because they know they're professional, they know they can work with them, and they know that this person has 30 separate voices. So I can just cast this guy again. I can just cast this girl again and again. So that's part of what you're pushing back against when you're trying to get into voice acting. I really enjoyed the background extra work. I might go back to it. I don't know, depending on if I got a large enough advance that I needed some part-time work, I would definitely go back to being an extra, because I learned so much about film and television just sitting against the wall, quiet, watching them work. In terms of writing, I didn't really intend to be a screenwriter. I've always wanted to write films, but I didn't really know how to do it, and I didn't go to school for it. I took some playwriting classes in theater class, but I didn't take any screenwriting. But I'd read some books about it, and I'd read some screenplays, and I was working with the Writers Guild of Canada, and through the Writers Guild of Canada, I met a lot of writers and I met a lot of screenwriters, and then a few of them encouraged me to write a web series. So I did, and from there, I thought, oh, this is really cool. So we wrote and filmed it, and it's out there in the world, and I'm not telling you the name of it, because I'm an actor in it too, and I'm not telling you the name of it. And then I wrote another, and it's sort of been bouncing between production companies. It's actually under consideration with another production company right now. And then I wrote a screenplay, and I got some awards for it, and I wrote another screenplay, and I put it up online for free, and people encouraged me to submit it, so I won a couple more awards for that. And then a director came to me and said, well, I've read it, I would like to make it, so now it's in pre-production with a company here in Toronto. So I sort of tumbled into the screenwriting thing, and I would love to deliberately, like I would straight up, my dream right now at this point in my career is to go write a mini series for Netflix. Like, that's my number one dream right now. I would love to write a mini series for Netflix, either based on one of my books or on a couple of other things that I have ideas for. But that's like the big thing I'd love to do right now. Or, Amazon Prime or Hulu or Vimeo or something like that. But a production company with a lot of money and a willingness to take risks on what might be kind of gonzo ideas by a slightly untested writer. That's what I would like to do right now. But that's how I got into film and television. I would love to be in that world more, but you have to take baby steps, a little bit at a time.
What is your ideal writing setting?
My ideal writing setting is right here. You can see it all around you. This is my writing office. Over here I have a whiteboard wall that is covered with scribbles for the books that I'm working on now. I also have a notepad right here that I can write on. For me, the ideal writing setting is silence and privacy, and actually no light. I tend to write at night. I just like the flickering glow of the laptop screen that is probably ruining my eyes, but I need to immerse myself in the world of the story with as few distractions as possible. So I can't write in cafes, I can't write in bars, I can't do any of that. Strangely enough, though, I do like editing in cafes and bars because I like having the external stimulus to keep me from getting too invested in the story. If there's something to keep pulling me out of the story, then instead of reading, I'm paying attention to the grammar and the sentence structure. So ideal writing space.
How did you feel once your first book was published, released, and reviews started pouring in?
I was very excited when Triptych came out. I never intended to be a writer, as I've said earlier, so it was very exciting, and the publication process was a lot slower back then. I didn't have as much pressures on my time, and I didn't have to kind of rush through things. So we had really worked on this book for about 2 years, and getting to have this party and have everybody there, because it was, of course, my first book, and now it's a little bit old hat, and friends and family members are like, oh, I'll come to the next book launch, but then it was like the first one, so I had like almost 100 people show up, and there was cake from my friend who's a professional baker, and Todd McCaffrey just kind of wandered into the book launch, so that was really exciting because we did it at a convention. And the reviews were really wonderful. The first batch of reviews were so flattering that I didn't learn to get scared about reading reviews right away. I actually, when I got the Publisher's Weekly review where I got 1 star, funny story, I called my editor and I was like, really, they didn't like it? This is kind of the first negative review, only 1 star. And she's like, no, honey, Publisher's Weekly only gives 1 star. You get a star or you don't get anything. And I was like, oh, that's really good. So I called my mom, I got a star with Publisher's Weekly. And she's like, oh, I'm sorry, honey. Maybe next time you'll get 5. So we didn't know what that star meant at the time. Unfortunately, when the first book came out, I accidentally read a completely horrific review. It came into my website because the person linked back to my website, and because everything had been so positive to that point, I was just blindly reading every review that came in and just loving it, because the great thing about a good review is when the reader gets it and you know that the reader got it, and you have that beautiful connection with the reader where you're like, yeah, you see what I was doing there, and you caught it, and you've caught me catching you, and it's like a thing, and it's great. I was really into having that experience with every review and every reviewer, and then so I just blindly clicked on this thing, and it was a lot has been said about this reviewer in other places, including by me, but so I'm not going to cover that, but basically this review was so horrific that it was 4 posts long, and this person was advocating their readers of their reviews to commit personal harm against me. Not because they're homophobic or because they didn't agree with what I did in the book, but I didn't tell the story they thought that I should have told, which is an extremely entitled piece of crap. And instead of educating and saying, you're trying to be progressive, but you did this bit wrong, and this bit was a little insulting, and maybe you should next time try to formulate it like this, instead of educating, this person was just like, let's just kill everybody. And I mean literally, like advocating murder. I believe there was a line about how my parents should have aborted me. There was something about throwing acid in my face. And I found out later, I didn't know it at the time, I found out later, but that this person has been so vitriolic and horrific to so many authors that someone did try to commit suicide. Someone else was harmed. Someone harmed themselves. Like, there's a list of, and I believed this person. Like, I believed that this person would hurt me. And I have been stalked before, back when I was an actor. So I know that people will hurt you for not being exactly what they dream of in their head. And so I stopped reading reviews. I stopped going to conventions because I genuinely felt that this person's followers were going to harm me, or this person themselves, and they were anonymous, so I didn't know what they looked like, and I didn't know who they were. I genuinely, honestly believed that I was going to be hurt or killed because I didn't tell the story that I wanted to tell the right way, according to this singular human being on the other side of the planet. And I didn't write for a very long time, and that's why it took Skylark's Song like 8 years to come out, because I was in the middle of writing it when I accidentally read this review. So now, I hate to say that every launch that I have is tainted by this bittersweet experience, but it really is. When you're launching a book, it's like sending your kid to kindergarten for the first time. And now I know that not my kid is going to get bullied, but some other person's going to come at me for being the wrong kind of parent. And so I'm a lot more tentative. I scan the crowd at my book launches. I read reviews like this. If it's not a 5-star, like if it's not straight up a 5-star, I generally don't read it. When big think pieces come out about my work, I ask my friends to read it first, and to just send me the good bits. So I was really, really excited about my first book, and I loved the experience, and it was just wonderful to be able to not only share a piece of your soul and your heart and this wonderful story that you want to tell with people who are receptive and are taking joy in your joy. And I still feel that with every single book, but it is I'm a lot more tentative about how willing I am to open my heart to those reviews now, unfortunately.
What was the largest obstacle you had to face writing your books?
The largest obstacle I've had to face writing my books right now, in the beginning it was sort of trying to figure out how to write books, because I knew how to write short stories, I knew how to write fan fiction, I knew how to use all the cultural shorthands that already existed in fan fiction to just skip all the world building and tell the story. So now it's how do I and then it was like, how do I structure a full narrative and feed the world building in? And I've kind of got that down now. And how do I like to write novels was the next big challenge. So like figuring out my environment, figuring out what kind of timing I needed to be able to do it. The big challenge now is being able to afford the time to write a novel. So I haven't been fortunate enough to get any big advances recently, ever really. And writing books takes time. It takes hundreds and hundreds of hours to even just put it on the page. And that's not talking about the editing and the typesetting, or the copy editing. I mean, I don't do the typesetting. And putting together the marketing materials, and then marketing yourself afterwards, and keeping your website up, and maintaining your social media, and collecting your reviews, and doing interviews like this. It's wonderful, and I love doing it, but it's time consuming. And that's all stuff you don't get paid for. And if you get a big advance, then the big advance kind of covers all of that stuff that you're kind of, in a way, getting paid to do all the rest of it. But if you are writing the book with no advance, and you're just hoping that you're going to get royalties to come in that pay for that time, you might not get that. And my royalties have been lovely, but everybody could want more. And I'm at the point now where my writing career is taking up so much of my time, in a very good way, but taking up so much of my time, that I wish I could drop my day job down to part-time. Because if I could do part-time day job and, full-time writing, then I can balance that easily. Or, doing full-time writing would be phenomenal if I could say goodbye to the day job and just be a writer full-time with all of the stuff that goes with the writing. Unfortunately, the money's just not there yet. I would very much like to have a more generous advance. I would like to have happier looking royalty checks. It's not quite there yet. And there are grants and things like that I can apply for and have applied for and have won. But in the end, being a writer full-time is the next big challenge, is the next big thing that I'm aiming at. Can I create something that is going to get people to buy it in big enough numbers that I can afford to be a full-time storyteller? That's the next big hurdle that I need to get over. Hopefully.
And last question. Do you have any new projects you are working on? And can you tell us a little bit about them, or are they secrets?
Question 8. Do I have any projects coming up that I can tell you about? Actually, a couple. I just won a Toronto Arts Council grant to finish something called The Madding Science, which is the novel-length version of a short story I wrote in 2011, was published in 2012, about, it's the 100-year memoir of a former supervillain, and the tagline of the book is, "Heroes can save the world, but villains can change it." I've been wanting to write this book for a while, and I'm really glad I got the grant. I am struggling with it a little bit because it's set so firmly in reality that I actually have to stop and do research a lot more than I thought I would have to. So, things like, and then I paid 25 cents to get on the subway. And it's like, oh, wait, did the subway exist then? How much did it cost? Did it actually cost that much? So I've had to stop. I have to keep interrupting myself in the narrative to find these answers. And then I'm also a little hesitant because of the current political climate. Oliver Munson, my main character, is a man who was a superhero but chooses to use villainy in order to change the world for the better, or at least change the world the way he thinks it should be changed. And he does things like rob banks and sell drugs, and he does terrible things in order to be a hero, and that's sort of kind of the point of the book. But in the current political climate where we have self-important white straight men shooting school children and driving vans onto sidewalks, and like recently happened a couple blocks from my house, firing a gun into the open window of several restaurants as he walked down the street, I'm now wondering how appropriate it is to write a story about a cis white straight man who uses guns to try to change the world to match what he thinks it should be. I don't know if this is responsible storytelling right now. So it's something I'm wrestling with as I'm trying to write the book. Also, I wrote a book a couple years ago, and it received a lukewarm reception from my agent and from the few editors that we sent it out to. So I've been working with some professional editors on the side, and we've kind of identified the problems with the book. So I have to basically, if you can imagine a house, take all the pieces of the house apart, redig the foundation, take the appropriate pieces of the house that I want to keep, put them back together, and then add all the other extra stuff that I have to add to it. So I kind of have to rewrite that entire book. I don't know which of these two books I'm going to finish first. I wish I could kind of work on both at the same time, but I can't. And also, I'm going to relax for a little while. I mean, October is the write nothing month for me because I put out 6 books in 4 years. I'm really tired. So I'm just taking time to get caught up on the shows that I want to watch and the books that I want to read. I'm so far behind on all of the fantastic books that people have put out recently. So I've been spending a lot of time just reading. That's everything. I've got a couple other ideas, but I'm kind of saving them. So we'll see.
Thank you so much for taking time to answer all of these questions. We really, really appreciate it. And I look forward to seeing what else you come up with.
So thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. If you have more questions about anything that I've talked about today, or you would like to ask me a question, I do answer questions about the business and craft of writing on my website in an article series called Words for Writers. So you can find those at www.jmfrey.net, jmfrey.net. Just scroll down to the bottom and click on Words for Writers. All 75 plus articles should be there. And if I haven't answered a question that you have for me, just click on the contact button, send me an email, and I would be happy to address the question for you in a new article. Thank you again, Di, for having me here. I really appreciate it, and best of luck to everybody who is looking to be a writer, and thank you so much to everybody who reads and reviews my work. I really appreciate it. Have a great day.
If you guys like this video, please give it a big thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe and hit that bell icon so you always get notified when I post a new video. And if you guys like this video, then you should be excited because I have some more authors coming up that are working on their questions.
Bye. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, J.M. Frey, once again. Thank you for your time. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Bye.